Hi, this is Anthony Parent. Today is June 21st. With me are our longtime guests, John Richardson and Keith Redmond. Gentlemen, here we are today. We are going to be discussing a new proposed law, and it's something that we've kind of heard of a version of before, way back when, as a proposed sort of fix to the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act and the various problems of citizenship-based taxation. This little baby is called House Resolution 5799, and it's Carolyn Maloney who's presenting it. She calls this one the Overseas American Financial Access Act. And Carolyn Maloney has been involved in FATCA. She was participating in the hearing we had back in 2017. Is this truly, here's what I've heard, that this is actually just the FATCA same country exception. John Richardson, is that true?
I'm going to be honest, I've only read it once, but I would have to say yes. And I would also say right out of the gate that it does little or nothing to solve the problems of Americans abroad.
Well, I did read it, so we're going to do a screen share. So I can tell you this: your conclusion is correct. Believe it or not, your conclusion is correct. Now, Keith, what have you heard?
Shocked.
Yeah, Keith, what have you heard about this bill? Eddie, what's the buzz going around the Beltway about this baby?
Well, I don't know about the buzz going about the Beltway. I know that this bill has been being pushed by Democrats abroad and American citizens abroad as to be a fix for FATCA, which is unacceptable because there is no fix for FATCA. The genesis of this bill is because of bank account closures, mortgage denials, etc., that has occurred because of FATCA being forced on financial institutions in various countries around the world. But the problem is the actual reality on the ground outside the American bubble putting this into play. I've had the opportunity over the past few years of speaking with banking authorities in key countries and key banking executives and talking about the possibility of same country exception. And all but one bank in Sweden have said to me that this does not solve the problem. This has nothing to do with the bank account closures. The problem lies with the threat of the 30% withholding penalty that it hangs over the heads of these banks for any recalcitrant type of accounts. And in fact, this creates more of an administrative burden because every year they'll need to see, okay, which people are in country, which people are out of country, et cetera. And they just, it's just too much for these banks to do it. So they weren't impressed with this particular same country exception, quote unquote, solution.
And this might be a good time for me to interject with what I would describe as same country exception as what I understood it. They were proposing was basically if you are in a foreign country living, your foreign accounts in that country wouldn't be something you would need to report. Now, the problem with that is the chances of you just having your stuff in one foreign country is remote. And now it actually makes it more complicated because you have to figure out if exception applies, which only makes the code more complicated. Not really what we want to see. So every phone here rings when it rings once. It's pretty annoying. The other problem with the other problem with it is it doesn't do anything about the banks and what they have to do to go through to do their due diligence to see there. They still have to go through their thing. And as Keith mentioned, that's just an administrative burden. So this same country exception is not a fix. It's just adding more complications to a ill-thought system. It's time to admit defeat. Now, that is what I'm going to say. Now, what we're going to do is we're all going to dive into the bill. Now, John has not seen this draft, so this is him sight unseen. So let's see how it goes. I'm going to try to get my screen. I'm going to share my screen, and I got that up somewhere here. Where are we here? Firefox text. There we go. Let me know. You guys see that? You guys have this beautiful page, congress.gov.
Yes.
Okay, great. So here it is, HR 5799 to amend the Internal Revenue Code. I'm not going to read through the entire text. That's a little tedious.
Don't go too fast, okay?
Yeah, but I'm going to stop on section 2 because this is where I think we're going to get to the meat of it.
Okay, here we go. Exception for certain individuals who live abroad. So this is a new addition. This is an addition. In general, whoa, I don't like that. Unless the foreign financial institution elects to not have this subparagraph apply, such terms shall not include any depository account maintained by such financial if each holder of such account is a natural person, a qualified individual with respect to a foreign country. Qualified individual for purposes of this subparagraph is a qualified individual with respect to any foreign country. Okay, I got the gist of it, so I have some comments if you want.
Yes, that's what we're here for.
You know, this stuff is technical. All right, you know that, Anthony and Key. But I want to begin with, I cannot overemphasize how completely useless and irrelevant this is. All right, just to be clear. Now I'm going to explain why, okay? Well, yeah. All right. The first point is that it says unless the foreign financial elects not to have the subparagraph, they can opt out of it. That's the first.
Right.
They can opt out of it.
I was reading. I was like, my lawyer skills are like,
but it gets worse. It gets worse. Okay. You think this is funny? All right. Now,
it
is interesting.
No, because I'm wondering what's wrong with my brain. I'm like, I'm reading this. I'm like, but the way it's written, it's like this doesn't matter.
Right.
Okay. Now, I also want to add, this is an extremely important point here. Extremely important for you and listeners. Is it's restricted to a depository account.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let me finish. A depository account is your most basic savings checking account. There is no exclusion whatsoever here for the kind of brokerage accounts that are needed. Let's continue on. It is important that this is restricted to natural persons. Now, this would mean that your dog would not qualify. It also would mean that your small business would not qualify. All right. So if you're running a small business, corporation, etc.
Okay.
Okay. Now, I'm not sure what to add to this, so I'm not going to go there. It's not critical. Then what they're doing, though, is they are tying, the question becomes, who are the qualified individuals? As you might expect, they're putting this over to section 911D. 911D. Now, I don't have 911D in front of me. Let's not go there for a second. Okay, but that is the foreign earned income exclusion section. There are two kinds of ways to activate that. The first is the physical presence. The second is bona fide residence. And maybe somebody could look up behind the scene. I'm going to bet my last dollar that 911D, it may very well be restricted to bona fide residence use of the foreign earned income exclusion. Maybe somebody can check that out. I don't have it in front of me.
I can get to it right now.
Okay.
911D is.
Read it to me out loud.
Yep, I will in a second. It's going. Definition, special rules. One, qualified individual means any individual whose tax home is in a foreign country and who is a citizen of the United States and establishes to the satisfaction of the secretary that he has been a bona fide resident or of a foreign country or countries for an uninterrupted period, which includes an entire taxable year, or B, a citizen or resident of the United States and who during any period of 12 consecutive months is present in a foreign country and or countries during at least 330.
Okay, I was wrong on that. All right, it includes either test. So basically what it's saying is you're a qualified individual if you would qualify under the foreign earned income exclusion, which means for starters that you need to have that tax home in the foreign country, etc. Anyway, look, the bottom line is that, I mean, this is crazy.
It is.
I mean, it's delegate. First of all, it doesn't do anything really. The most it could do is, assist with, the most basic kind of account. But secondly, I mean, is this seriously delegating to these foreign banks to make this decision whether somebody qualifies? I mean, you know what? They're going to have to go have a U.S. lawyer on staff. This might as well be a directive that every bank in the world has to hire a U.S. tax lawyer. There, you, Anthony, perhaps.
I got enough stuff to do.
You want to go to law? I mean, really? Can you let's see? This
No,
is
I don't.
what I'm saying. You want to scroll down more? I mean,
Yeah. All right. Let's see here.
oh, now here we go. Now let's go down to 3. This is going to be important.
Okay.
What we've talked about before has to do with this from the bank perspective. Section 3, because as you know with the FATCA, it's aimed at 2 kinds of things. The first is at the banks itself, and the second at the individual. Now, Section 6083D of the Internal Revenue Code is, the technical description for what we all understand to be Form 8938. So this is aimed at individual reporting requirements. Let's see what it says. So they're adding another thing. So basically, exception for certain financial accounts of individuals living abroad. In the case of an individual, respecting subsection A shall not apply to such individual if such individual not be required to provide any information if a qualified account were not taken into account, blah, 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 blah. Qualified account means qualified individual. What it seems to be saying, is that with respect to the carve-outs that are provided here, which would be at least the depository accounts, they don't have to go on the Form 8938. That's what it looks like to me. Okay, but I'd have to, sit down and read.
And that would context
the whole bill. But it clearly is aimed at the banks. Okay, and all it is a carve out for the most basic kind of account. And for the individuals, the Form 8938, which appears to be saying to me, we don't have time to read it 100 times here, but what it seems to be saying is that if it's if it meets the requirement of that basic account, it doesn't have to be reported by the bank, so to speak, and it doesn't have to be on the Form 8938 either. But in any case, it is inconceivable to me that any person who had an iota of understanding of this stuff could possibly try to pass this off as some kind of, a solution. The solution, the reason this is a problem, okay, Anthony, not FATCA that's the problem. The problem is that FATCA is forcing banks to report on people with U.S. tax residency, and the U.S. defines tax residency in terms of citizenship. That's the problem. So the way you solve the problem for all people, all circumstances, all the time, is you get rid of citizenship taxation. That's how you do this. Not with this other stuff that, it's beyond my comprehension that anybody could seriously think it's not even a help.
No, it creates more of a burden on the banks. Big time. Absolutely.
And I would say, this bill could get stuck into something else, and maybe that's how it gets passed. Yeah. But this is, we've seen some bad things. This is so bad. What's nice about it is it's short and bad. Most of them are very long and bad. So this one, you could really, we really were able to get to the heart of it quickly. You did a great job, John.
Yeah, but Anthony, I'm chomping at the bit here, and I'm going to refer back to a previous podcast we did, where we highlighted Commissioner Rettig in hearings in front of Congress. Didn't he say that the FATCA data that has come through to the IRS is not being looked at because they do not have the resources to go through the data? Okay. So what the hell is this being a FATCA fix? It makes no sense whatsoever just within the FATCA realm to have something more complicated. And the IRS is not even looking at the data in the first place. They don't even have the resources to do it.
Well,
So
they don't,
somebody
well,
is not thinking.
he also said they didn't have the resources to look into it. And assuming they had any actionable intelligence, they don't have the resources to do anything about it. They don't have the examiners who can handle this sort of thing.
Right. Has
So
anybody said this to Carolyn Maloney? Do the Democrats abroad and American citizens abroad who support FATCA same country exception, do they realize this?
Well,
That's a big question.
Well, Keith, I think as I hear a subliminal point of yours, perhaps that, well, if you are a fan of FATCA, don't you want it fixed? Because the problem is that all this massive collection of data from around the world, which you consider a good thing, we're not able to do anything with it. So wouldn't you want to craft some sort of law that says, okay, we're going to create a new commission to create a new collection gateway for all financial institutions around the world, and they will have to be forced to put it into the system, and it will be billions of dollars in development and will take years and years to get into place, which makes it a perfect government program, creating other government programs in the process.
But here's the thing. Meanwhile, as John said, and he's absolutely correct, you have to decouple, unlink, sever U.S. citizenship from tax residency. And once that's done, if the U.S. wants to sign up for CRS, Common Reporting Standard, that's fine. There is no reason on the face of this planet to fix something that is a boondoggle. Absolutely none. It's crazy.
Well, as I'm looking at this proposed bill, you know what? I actually think Carolyn Maloney's just kind of being a politician. I don't think this thing actually will get passed.
Or to give her due benefit of the doubt, she's being fed incorrect information.
Yeah, well, she's also the person who votes, so that's not an excuse. That means you should resign. Carolyn Maloney is going to be, this is the latest news, unless I think if anything's overturned, her district has been redrawn and she will be going toe-to-toe with Jerry Nadler. So my suspicions is this just gets her a press release that in this district, oh, I put forward this law. And I would say, don't give her any credit for this. If you are someone who is thinking about whatever, don't give her any credit for this, because this is a complete waste of time. It's worse. It's worse than nothing. However, it may help her give the appearance as if she's trying to help the problem, but the only solution to this problem would be, as John says, going to a residency-based taxation, which no one is even talking about.
Actually,
no. And if she supported something like that, she would be God to Americans overseas and accidental Americans.
Here's another solution I just thought of. So I don't know if you're aware of this. Probably not, because very few people are. But if you have some time, some people read great literature. Some people read magazines. Some people read the internet. And some people read the Internal Revenue Code.
Yes.
But if you look at the IGAs, the most overlooked and I think fascinating and damaging provision in it is if you look in the definitions, it's the double E, / you will see that the meaning of U.S. citizen, or maybe it's U.S. resident, one or the other, is defined in accordance with U.S. law. So not only have these people signed this totally one-sided agreement, but by signing the agreement, they have allowed the United States to determine which of the residents in their own country are going to be treated as U.S. tax residents. Isn't this incredible? I mean, can you imagine a country agreeing to let another country, through their own domestic legislation, define who is actually a tax resident in your country? I mean, this is I frankly think that this is grounds for every one of these governments to be, removed from office. But leaving that aside, maybe they knew this and had their reasons. I mean, perhaps the government of Canada thought it would be administratively easier to allow the United States to define which Canadian should be treated as U.S. tax residents. Probably they saw it as a way to save money and not have their own commission. But this opens up an opportunity, and that is I mean, why get into the same country exception for me? Why not just U.S. Treasury can get Congress to amend the Internal Revenue Code so that everybody in the world is a U.S. tax resident? Everybody in the
Yeah.
And then we wouldn't have to worry about these carve outs. Everybody in the world would have to file these FATCA declarations. No, I mean, wouldn't that make more sense?
When we're not that brilliant, and this is what I was thinking about as we're talking, how the United States is changing the law administration and the law, that meaning the law of other countries. And these other countries didn't vote for the IRS. We didn't vote for the IRS.
Yes, they have.
Let me find this. I mean, it's amazing to me. I've never seen anybody, and all the stuff that's been written about FATCA, how horrible it is. Nobody ever focuses. I mean, in my view, this is.
You gave away your country. These countries gave away their, like, well, for some stuff we have jurisdiction, but on important stuff, well, that goes to the U.S. Treasury. I mean, that's what they did. You all gave in. You did not, and you all fell over. And I think the reason why is
in some countries,
or accountant telling them you better do it.
Yeah, and some countries actually changed their privacy rights, their privacy laws, to satisfy FATCA.
Well, they all change it whether they admit it or not. I mean, is that other countries regard it as a treaty, when the U.S. doesn't. I mean, it really shows you how little citizenship taxation is understood in the world.
Right. All these other countries, they didn't know what they signed on to.
They had no idea what they were signing up. I mean, they didn't have a lot of incentive because, to go back to the great line from The Godfather, either your signature or your brains will be on it.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But no, they didn't.
All right. So I want to tease on our next episode with Karen. You guys ready for that? And then we'll hit some comments.
Sure.
All right. So next week, let me get this up here. So next week on June 28th, we are going to be going over House Resolution 6057, Tax Simplification for Americans Abroad Act, otherwise known as the Unintentional Comedy Act. We're going to have Karen Alpert join us on that. She's been a guest of our program before, an absolutely brilliant individual. So she's going to be on. You're definitely going to want to check that out. And we'll be talking about the third one too, the week after that, House Resolution 5800, Commission on Americans Living Abroad Act of 2021.
Okay, if I may.
All right, well, hopefully we'll have it.
Let me know when you're ready.
I am ready.
All right. So for listeners, what you do is you Google whatever country you are. I'm looking at Canada, US, Canada, FATCA, IGA, US, Germany, whatever. And it's a standard agreement. And what will show up on page 7 under definition EE, the term US person means a US citizen or resident individual, partnership, a trust, and a state. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. For people who are considering they might die someday. But what is critical is this. Okay. It says this paragraph, 1EE, now listen carefully, shall be interpreted in accordance with the U.S. Internal Revenue Code. All right. Now, you might be thinking, well, what does that have to do with the definition of U.S. citizenship? The answer, if you go to the definition section of the code 7701A50, you will see that what it says in effect is that a U.S. citizen is considered to be a U.S. citizen for tax purposes until a CLN has been issued. Now, the point is simply that the Internal Revenue Code at present does play a role in the definition of a U.S. citizen for tax purposes. And that can be changed, basically gradually increasing the range of people who will be sucked into this thing. We'll call it citizenship free. I mean, I swear to God, all right, not realize.
So John, so what you're saying is that all of these countries agree that the IRS determines whether or not that person is a tax resident and only if there's a certificate of loss of a loss of nationality. And so the country the person is in doesn't get to decide. It's the IRS that decides, is what you're saying. And so now they're acting as an agent under the assumption that it all applies. So they've changed from sort of the interpretive of law. Now they're okay, yep, we've interpreted law and we're going to interpret it this way. And now we'll be the enforcers of the law as well, as much as we are willing to get involved.
Well, I think it probably includes all that, but to keep it real simple, okay, what it means is that by signing the FATCA IGA, every one of these countries has delegated to the United States the right to determine which residents of their own countries are U.S. tax residents.
Exactly.
Beautifully said, John. Thank you. That's
so obvious.
From that day on, the U.S. doesn't even ever need a formal declaration of war against any country. All it has to do is designate all the residents of that country as U.S. citizens. It's over.
You're right. You're right. Oh, we're also anyone. We're all well. Okay, maybe
the nuclear option, but maybe this is good. We don't need weapons anymore. We just changed the definition of tax residency.
Well, and maybe some people say, well, that'd be going a little too far. Well, how about this? What if they change the definition of tax residency to say, well, it also includes anyone who's visited the U.S. for a week or day? Yeah.
Let me pause you on that. You may or may not know this, okay? You know, because there's only 2 or 3 people in this world who are FBAR scholars, true FBAR scholars. I am not one of them, but I know one of them, okay? So I found myself in more conversations about Mr. FBAR than average. But if you actually read Title 31, Section 5314, that lays out the FBAR requirements, you will see that the requirement to report foreign bank accounts does apply to people who visit the United States and do business in the United States regardless of their citizenship. And the only reason that there are not FBAR, that people don't have to file an FBAR declaration anytime they leave the United States is because the IRS and Treasury, in its generosity, has exempted visitors from the U.S. from the FBAR requirement. But this is not a matter of speculation. This is written right into the statute.
So that could just be a regulatory change. If we could just change it to say we're going to apply. You know, we're going to find the bank secret. Well, why not? Right? We're going to say, you know, we're going to apply the Bank Secrecy Act. Now that's not tax jurisdiction, but the way you could apply FBAR penalties, it's much more worse than tax. So if you wanted to ruin everyone, here's your go. If you wanted to ruin everyone, pass a small little regulation, tiny little regulation, maybe put it on the instructions. Oh, by the way, the form that you're not reading because you don't think it applies to you actually does, but you're not reading the form. So we're going to make it apply to you. Oh, you didn't report your foreign bank accounts. All right, well, we're going to hit you with a 50% penalty for each year. We haven't been doing it every year, but we're going to do that now. Now we're going to ruin you. So very stealthily, I mean, that is very stealthily, a few changes of regulations, the United States government declaring war on everybody, including us, and including its own citizens. Well, there it is. Wow.
Yeah. So, Anthony, please go ahead.
The point here is that these laws have got to be changed. Okay. I don't think more than 1% of the people who know what an FBAR is, who even know that the statute says this, and know that the IRS and Treasury, to its credit, is actually protecting non-U.S. citizen or resident visitors to the United States from this requirement.
Well, isn't that something? It's like, well, why do U.S. citizens have to report and not foreigners, right? Aren't they bringing that foreign money in there? So why is it on us? Shouldn't we be demanding that, hey, let's be fair and make sure FBARs are required to anyone using the U.S. bank system or world banking system?
Anthony, you make a very rational point. I use the word rational instead of correct, but it's right. It makes a lot of sense, because if you carry your thinking over to the estate tax provisions, right? And it's very important that if you're not a U.S. citizen or resident, you do not die with a bunch of U.S.
Absolutely.
fascinating is, as you presumably know, is that if you have if you die somewhere in the world and you're not a U.S. domiciliary and you have U.S. cited assets, usually real estate and securities, stocks, etc. Okay, to the extent that the value is over $60,000, the U.S. is claiming 40% of that, if you can imagine. So, I've said many, many times that the U.S. is very hostile towards anything foreign, but this particular aspect of the estate tax regime is really, I think it should just simply be called the Confiscation of Non-U.S. Residents Assets Act.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do have a video on that topic. I don't know if we did it together. We might have done it together. I know it's familiar, but it's devastating. It's just terrible. All right, with that, you guys ready
we are ready for the comments.
You're ready for the comments?
What I want to conclude is that I guess the three of us are in agreement that this particular bill, which is FATCA same country exception, is not acceptable, and it should not be supported at all.
And I don't think it should even be looked like as a
fix,
because
right.
it's so not transparently bad that it shouldn't even be. Carolyn Maloney shouldn't get no credit for this. She should get no credit. It's like, okay, you did something for a press release. That's all it is. It's not.
She needs to listen to new people, different people, because whomever she's listening to, she's getting wrong information.
Well, here's somebody to listen to. How about some of our commenters? Let's get over to some going on here. I think these are some people to listen to here. Let's go to our last video we had up there. I got this here. These controls are in my way there. Okay, here's our last video here. We got some fantastic comments here. And Mike Breen writes, the freedom to walk away from a nation is a vital human right. Written in blood, Americans no longer have that right. I fully agree with the analysis by John. This is a nice carve out for the banks and a section of U.S. persons abroad, but it's not helpful with the goal of ending the problem, which is the USA taxing other nations' residents, what we were just talking about today, huh? In some ways, it's damaging to that cause. The U.S. says, we fixed your damned problem. Well, let's give Mike a big thumbs up for that one. Anything we want to add to Mike? Thanks for your comment. I think you're
he's spot on.
Yeah, spot on. There we go. Nice. Okay, vertical wisdom. Vertical wisdom. I had already respond. And here, here's the question: what's exactly the benefit being a U.S. citizen abroad? And we have to renounce to live free. Vertical wisdom plants trees. They volunteer, and that's what they do. Vertical wisdom likes to plant trees and take care of nature around the world. And they have to renounce their citizenship in order to plant trees to make the world a better place because fairness. Mary Gizzy says, please add links to John articles. Should I put a link into your website? Where should they go for?
It should be there, the website, in each of the podcasts.
I did put our content up here. So if you go here, I think you'll see John's content right here. Here's John right here. I'll just put I'll put a link to the.
Yeah, for the listeners, they have all the ways to get in touch with us as well as the proper links, like with John's articles and the American Expatriates group on Facebook. And your link with IRSMedic.
All right, Joshua Johnson outdoors. He might plant trees too. Who knows? He could be a criminal because he plants trees, or maybe he goes fishing. Who knows? It's all these crazy things Americans abroad are doing. Here's our next one. Do you have a date and time for all your next broadcasts? Okay, so we're doing every Tuesday at noon is when we're launching this series. So just subscribe and you'll be the first. And if you comment quick enough, we'll respond to your comments on the air. And so how can you help with all the effort? Watch the episode. You're watching it right now. I would say watch today's episode. Watch what we are going to say June 21st episode. It will be great. And isn't that the truth? There's some truth in advertising. That's all right, maybe. All right, that's our comments for this week. What a fantastic episode. I'm really proud of us. We're fantastic.
No, and it's important for us to address any bills, anything that's going to affect American immigrants, accidental Americans, Americans overseas. We have to address it. We have to tell what the reality is on the ground on how this is going to be applied.
And that's the thing. And I don't think and I really appreciate both you guys, because without you, I would not be able to get to the bottom of this at all. I would not be able to do this by myself. It's overwhelming. And when you're trying to cross-reference various things, you get confused with some of this thing. So it's a
Sure.
great episode, guys. I really appreciate it. This is Anthony Parent for IRSMedic, John Richardson and Keith Redmond. Gentlemen, thank you. And until next time, signing off.